Ah, hello. Hey, how's it going, guys? Good morning. Sorry to be starting a little bit later than I was expecting, but took a little bit of time just to get everything set up this morning. So, uh, good morning. You guys can hear me okay? See me okay? Everything's looking good. Today we're going to be taking a look at, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 works today, I think. Let me check, make sure nothing else came in at the last minute. Oh, yes. Here's, let's see. One more, actually. So hang on. Let me just check this. All right. Anyway, so yeah, 5, 6 things we're going to be taking a look at today. So should be good. I just need to check this. So bear with me. Hang on just a minute. Everything, yeah, good. Yeah. Yes. The move is going well, but it's pretty much done. I mean, like everything's pretty much done. Just like, you just have the last few things just kind of sitting around while you're like kind of sorting things out. Actually, what I've been actually, there's in one particular room in our new house, especially like a lot of my backlog that's sitting there. That room is still quite messy because I can't really organize it because I needed some brackets to put up some shelves and I couldn't find the brackets anywhere. Here are the ones that I needed. So my wife had to help me find some online. So we had to order some brackets online. And for some reason, they're taking a couple days to arrive. Usually here in Korea, because the country is so small, anything you order online, it will come like in a day. You don't like have to specially choose like next day delivery. Pretty much anything will just come the next day, but it's taken a couple days to get those brackets. So hopefully they're arriving today, supposed to be, and then I can put up the shelves and finish up kind of putting away the portion of my backlog that's at home. This is just some of it that you're seeing here behind me there. So yes, give me just a second to check on this, and then we'll get started. Okay. All right. Cool. I think I'll take the submissions. We'll go through them in the order that I got them. So, hang on. Just preparing all the photos here so that don't have to do it between submissions. So I think that'll be easier. And it's what I was working on doing beforehand, which is why we started a little bit late, but there's one more submission that just came in, so wasn't able to prepare this one quite yet. But yeah, and we're taking a look at some stuff here. Some of the submissions are from like some new people. We haven't seen some submissions from before in previous episodes, so that's cool. And some people we usually see works from in previous episodes didn't submit work this time, so it's going to be kind of like a different group of works we're going to be seeing from some of the past episodes from different people. So, all right. Let's start off. First one here we're going to be taking a look at is from Evan. And it is a custom Guncannon that he's working on. So let me show it to you guys so you can see. Good morning. Nose is a little allergies. That's fun. There you go. Take a look at that. Give me just a second here. Get tissue. Oh, all right. Okay, here we are. This is Evan's Guncannon custom build that he's working on. Obviously, some kit bashing going on here. Let me just see what he said about this. Is in the early stages of his first kit bash. Okay, so it's his first time working on some kit bashing. He says, as it stands right now, I'm planning on a combination of the Guncannon Revive, the Gym Sniper 2, and the Gymcannon 2, along with some parts from the Easy Arms. Okay, so all kind of similar kind of stuff. I mean, it's not like combining like something from IBO and something from Unicorn, like a completely different universe. It's all kind of in. He's got like easy. He said he's using Easy Arms stuff, but that stuff is based off of the Easy 8 sort of. So he's basically kind of keeping it all around like 1 Year War technology around there, basically. Gym Sniper 2. The Gym Sniper 2 was 1 Year War, right? Towards the end. Anyway, currently don't have the Gymcannon 2 parts yet because of delayed shipping. Yeah, that's seems to be happening. So the basic concept was to be inspired by the gun of Mudrock and was ignited by love for. So he likes the heavy artillery, mobile suits, and with a lot of cannon power. Okay, got it. All right. So yeah, the first thing that came to mind with this one, just when I was just first looking at it, was that I liked the new proportions, and I like that he's using like the Guncannon like as the base, as like the main body. Obviously, at this point, it's like equal parts Gym Sniper 2 and Guncannon, basically. But still, with the main torso and like the head being Guncannon, I think you could still consider the Guncannon being the base. And so, Guncannon, not a very common choice for kit bashes like this. So I like that. That's a pretty unique. It's just something that I don't really see very often. People using the Guncannon and body and head like for like the main center part, but then using the Gym Sniper 2 parts. Obviously, it's much different proportions. The Gym Sniper 2 is a much like kind of sleeker design. It's not kind of like bulky and derpy like the Guncannon. So I like that it's kind of like a more sleeker and more advanced looking version of the Guncannon, basically, but still looks like a Guncannon essentially, right? So he's got the dual cannons with like the Guncannon cannons there, and then like those are the parts I guess from the Easy Arms set. Anyway, the cannon, the 180mm cannons from 8th MS team, basically on there as well. Usually not a big fan of dual wielding weapons, but in this case, I think it kind of works. I think it just kind of fits the aesthetic here of it just being very gun heavy. And I've talked about in different episodes before about sometimes too many guns is I mean, it's easy to go overboard. You know, you see custom kit bashes of people just adding way too many guns. But I don't know, it still kind of works for me. Obviously, there's a lot of guns there. 4 cannons and then dual wielding in the hands, but it works. It's like right on that limit of being like feasible without being just silly. You know what I mean? So I kind of like that, and I kind of like that the 2 different rifles are like different. They have a different utility, right? One is just a double pop machine gun, so you would think it would be for like mid range or even kind of like close range, basically. And then the beam rifle, obviously the Guncannon beam rifle for a little bit longer range. I'm not sure actually canonically what's the range on that rifle, but if you're like based on what we've seen like in different series and even like 8th MS team, it's basically used as a sniper rifle, sort of just for its long range. So sort of consider that it's like almost like a sniper rifle for it. But I think what would be cool to do with this would be to make an attachment, and then maybe he has plans for this. He didn't go into too much more detail about what his further plans are for this at the moment. But I think that what would be cool would be to make an attachment point for the back so that one of these rifles can also attach onto the back skirt. So if you just want to try out some different poses, maybe not always having it holding both, but you could try out some poses, maybe kneeling, holding the beam rifle like with 2 hands or something like that, and having the bullpup machine gun also attached just onto the back skirt or something here, just so that you can still see it like this, so that he's still got like multiple weapons there. And like I said, I think they suit different purposes. So I can understand like if this was like in like real world and like real anime or whatever, he is doing some long distance sniping, with a beam rifle, and then he's got the bullpup machine gun for, if there's any close or mid range combat or whatever, and then obviously the cannons and everything for bombardment. So I mean, the concept I like in general, just how everything's going. I don't really feel like these knee parts really blend well with the design. I get the idea of like wanting to add some parts to the knee, like to kind of either just bulk that out, or again just to kind of, if you're thinking about it from like the utility point of view of like extra knee armor there for it to kneel, to like do some sniping or something like that, for example. I get the utility of that. I don't really feel like that part though is quite right for this here. So I would recommend maybe trying to find some other part to use to bulk out the knee a little bit, or just go like full plot play and just build something, just custom build something out of plot play. Because I feel like it'd be kind of, just because of the shape of the Gym Sniper 2's like legs, I think it'd be pretty hard to find a good part that you could just stick on there that would fit well with the design. But this one, it's a bit too square. And the Gym Sniper 2's legs, have some nice curves to them everywhere, and then you just this big square part like on there just doesn't really quite fit. And then it's got like the hard point on there. You would at least need to cover that up, I think, because it just looks a bit odd having this circle hard point there, and then like the two holes at the bottom where it looks like something's supposed to plug on there. It looks like just a part of a kit where like something's supposed to plug on there, but it's not put on there. So I don't really feel like that part works. The parts on the side skirt, I think, looks fine. Those parts being attached onto the side skirt there, that works fine. The parts on the front of the chest, I think, works fine as well too. It looks like they're just stuck on there with blue tack for the moment, just as like a temporary placeholder. But I think those look like they fit fine there on the chest. So I'm cool with that. I like that. So yeah, at the moment, I think, the concept, everything's off to a good start. I like it. A couple of the kit bash parts, I would maybe reconsider or work on some of those a little bit. Basically just the knee. Everything else seems to be working pretty much fine. And then, then you just got to go forward with color and everything. So I'm not sure what his plans are for that as well, but something, I think, I don't know. I guess you could go either way, because like you could go, my immediate thought would be to do like something kind of earthy, like not super bright colors, but something sort of like more realistic colors, I think would be cool for this. But I mean, the Guncannon is bright red. So, I mean, you could go that route as well and just have some really bright colors. I think either way, I think could kind of be cool. But I would go, either one way or the other entirely. Maybe not like try to mix it up with like, but I don't know, that could look cool as well, basically. I don't know. Yeah, colors, I don't know. We'll see what he ends up going with this. Whether he's done by the next episode, the next critique episode, whether he's done or it's still a work in progress. Hopefully he'll submit some more photos and we'll either be able to see it done, or we'll be able to see it maybe at least started painting at that point, so we can take a look at how the colors are looking, things like that. But very cool, Evan. I like how that's looking. So, all right, let's see who was next. Then after that was Nim, who had a couple of kits that he submitted here. We're just gonna take a look at. Get these opened up. The first one being the what's the name of the company? Supernova. That's what it was. Yes. The Supernova Nataku kit. Here we are. There you go. And so he said this was hand painted too, and there's a couple other kits. He also included what looks like the Master Grade Camphor and the Shinmusha Gundam as well too. So he mentioned that this one was hand painted, but they all look to be hand painted. So I'm going to assume that they're all hand painted. But let's take a look at the Supernova Nataku kit here first. That I wonder what that waterslide decal is from. I'm sure it's not the one that's included with that kit, as far as I know. But it also kind of reminds me a little bit of the decal that was included with the uh, Destiny Impulse Gundam Blanche. What the hell? The water's leaking over there all of a sudden. Clean out the water boiler. That's strange. Okay. Anyway, so I'm not really familiar with this kit enough to know if he really modified anything about it. I don't think so. I don't think he did any modification to it, except for the fact that I'm just looking at the shoulder part and wondering if that shoulder is stock like that, how it has the part kind of like lifted up. It looks a bit odd, like some parts missing from there, or he made that a little bit different in a way that's sticking up like that. So I'm not sure what the deal with that is. And then maybe here on the top of the hand, those two little silver bits, maybe that's like little plat plate detail he added onto that. Or again, I'm not familiar with the base kit enough to know if that detail was stock, but maybe he added that because you can see in this picture as well too. At the ankle, it looks like maybe the same kind of things maybe added there. So maybe it was just a little bit of plat plating detail, maybe that he added to this. I am guessing, but I don't know exactly. But let me see. Anyway, just before we get to like the paint application, I think just the painting colors themselves work pretty fine. It's a bit dark for my personal taste, but I mean, if you wanted to go for like a really dark color scheme, I think it works pretty good. The color placement looks good. So I like that. The how it's mainly the black and purple are the two main colors, and then it didn't go too much with the secondary kind of like light purplish pink kind of color. There's little bits of it there, but if you make it like too evenly spread out between the three colors, like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, then I think it's not a good ratio for that. But basically, it looks more like it's like 50% black and like silver and gray monotone, and then like 35% purple, maybe even a little bit more, maybe 40% purple and 10% pink, like that. So hey, it's a good ratio of the colors there, I think. So that's good. I like that. The decals are pretty minimal as far as I can tell. It's just basically the ones on the shoulders and the shield there. So again, like stylistically, I think that's fine. Obviously, you could have gone a lot more with decals, or you could have gone no decals at all. But I mean, just what's there, just having a couple markings on there, I think, is fine. And as far as just like the hand painting, I think overall, I mean, you can definitely see some texture there, which typically you don't want. But I don't know. I kind of don't really mind it just for the style of this. Especially like here on the front of the chest, how it almost looks like, and because I don't know if this was intentional or not, but you can see like almost sort of like a little bit of like shading that he's done, just but not in like the typical way we usually do with an airbrush, but how it looks like around here on the chest plate, like there's a little bit of like gradient between, it's like a little bit lighter in the center and then darker out around the edges there. So I don't know if that was intentional or if I'm even seeing that the right way, but as far as I can see, that's what it looks like. And so it looks like if that's what he's done on purpose, I mean, it looks good like that. But yeah, usually don't want to see the brush strokes so much, but because this is like so stylistic too, with like the dark, super dark colors, and it's just done like a little bit different way, I can see it as being a more stylistic build and not like necessarily needing to adhere to the same kind of like tradition we would normally think of. Like if this was painted up in like normal colors and like the normal amount of markings and everything, and I could tell like he was going for a pretty like standard look for how we typically paint Gunpla, like typically like want a Gunpla to look, and the painting looked like that, then I would say I would say the amount of brushstrokes that you can see in there wouldn't be good. It wouldn't fit for that style. But for this style, I don't really mind it as much. It was kind of a little bit more stylistic look to it, I think. But that's that. Then there's also the camphor here. Now, for the camphor, I don't think it works quite as much. Obviously, this one's a very kind of stylistic color scheme as well too. But the overall effect, I think, works better on the Nataku. Whereas here on the camphor, I don't know. In certain areas, it kind of works, but also the decals are kind of throwing me off on this one as well too, because the decals are a little bit not very aesthetically pleasing, I think. Because it basically stuck to like the same kind of idea of basically like not doing a ton of decals, but just a few like main markings. But they're all kind of different, so they're just like kind of clashing a little bit. And then here on the Xeon logo there on the chest looks like the decals kind of silvered as well. So just the application of that one looks maybe not quite as smooth. But just like you have like up here on the shoulder like this like eagle, and then like it kind of matches a little bit the one down here, but the style is not exactly the same. Like they're both kind of like a bird, but it's not the same, so it looks a bit odd. And then like the number and the skull on the gun, like I think I could kind of see that as being, you know, like if you imagine this is like a war, is like a basically it's like a giant tank, right? Like a giant piece of war machinery, right? So you have like your official markings on it, like a number and like a logo of like if it, or just like for example if it was a Xeon, you know, it's like the Xeon marking logo. And like something like the skull on the gun is something that like just was like personally painted like by the pilot or something, as just like a personal logo or just like a personal thing painted on there. In that case, it's too straight. If like that's what you wanted to go for was something like that, you know, putting it on there like a little bit crooked or something, or like doing a wash or like scratching up the decal a little bit so that it looks like not quite as like pristine, like it was actually printed on there, but just like painted on there as just like a logo, kind of like with like old aircraft, how they would paint like, you know, different logos and stuff on there. But something like that, you want to make it look like it's not like perfectly straight and perfectly applied on there, if that's what you're going for. I don't know if that's exactly what you're going for with this, but that's kind of what it looks like. And so just that's what I think is kind of what works for that. So yeah, the markings are just kind of a little bit all over the place, not like in their location, I mean, but like in their continuity and like the style and the colors between them. I mean, obviously they're going to be different colors sometimes, but yeah, I don't really think that those are working. I would have gone like if you would only have just this eagle here on the shoulder and just the 28 there, and like not having like the Xeon logo and the ones on the legs and like the little star here and everything like that, then like just the ones on the shoulders, then I think it would have been cool. But sometimes like I can understand too, like sometimes you have all these cool markings like that you want to use, but you have to try to limit yourself, you know, don't overdo it. In terms of like the colors themselves, I think like the colors can work pretty well, the blue and gold and black, but I'm not sure about the placement, and I would really have to spend some time really thinking about it. What would be the ideal placement of where these would go? But I think a little bit more blue in the torso or something, I think would have looked good. Some part of this being blue as well, or just because it's like that's a big part to be blue, and then that's like kind of like the only part to be blue, essentially, and then just a little bit there on the hands and a little bit on the toes. But I think a little bit more. This is like an example, like I was talking about, like the ratio of colors here with this one, I think is good. With this one, it's like 80% black and, or maybe even more, like 85% black, 10% blue, and 5% gold. It's not enough blue, or you need to tweak it a little bit so that the parts that are blue, if you want to have just little bits of blue around on there, then the shoulder parts are quite big to be blue. If just one of them was blue, maybe, because then you can go for like that kind of look where like you have like the big red shoulder or something. Usually people use red for that because I think it's like a callback to Scope Dogs. But anyway, That's my thoughts on that. Yeah, I would really have to think about like if I were to advise which colors to put where. I'm not sure, but either a little bit more or a little bit less of that blue, I think would have been good for this one. All right, and the third one here is the Shin Musha, and this one is a little bit different because it's a very different style. Oh, here's a third picture of the Nataku. Sorry, I didn't see that was down here. This is a very different style, so it's a little bit harder to judge as far as like the colors and the color placement. But aside from that, I think that the really stark contrast on the face is a little too stark for me. How you have the super dark green, like so close to the white there in there for the face. It looks a bit odd. It's kind of really hard. I've talked about this in the past in different videos. I'm sure. I don't think I've talked about it for a while though, but I usually am never too big a fan of Gundams where the faceplate and the head are different colors. I usually like them to be the same color. I think it's pretty hard to pull off them being different colors. I have seen it done where it looks okay, but typically it looks a bit odd to have the faceplate. You could have like the side, how you can see like on his, he's got like the main center part is green, but then the side parts is like the teal blue. Having like, if that center part was white and then just the side, the like little bit of like blue, sorry, hitting the mic, a little bit of like teal blue there, like on the sides. I think that would have been really cool. Then you just got a little bit of color in there, but like still the head and like the face mask is all white. This one too, I think doing a little bit more detail painting, a little more panel lining on this one would have been good as well, just to bring out like all the cool details of it, like here on the pipes, like these little like the rings like at the end of the piping bits, like painting those in like a silver or different gray color or something like that could have been cool. And just like some panel lining. It looks like maybe he did do some panel lining in some sections, like here on the skirt. The front skirt looks like maybe there's some panel lining there, but other sections it looks like maybe didn't, like on the shoulders. They're like the little notches there on the shoulders, and the vents in the side of the head are not panel lined. So I'd say it's a little bit more detail painting, a little bit more panel lining on this would definitely help a lot as well. And overall, the color choices for this, again, I like the teal and the green and the like very light gray colors. I think do look nice together. The placement, I'm not sure, and the number of colors. So you have like the dark green, the light green, and the teal. Could be a little bit more. I think the dark green is a bit dark, so what I would do is maybe change a couple of the parts that are in dark green to one of the lighter colors. So you have just a couple of the dark green parts here and there, but I think there's maybe just a couple too many in there at the moment of the dark green. So you want, if you have a color that's particularly different from all the other colors, you probably want to keep it to very limited. So like for example, you see like a lot of builds, and I've done these before too, where it's like all gray, and then you have just a couple parts of like the bright orange or something like that for like accents. This is kind of like the opposite of that, sort of where you're using like a darker color for the accent. But basically you don't want those parts to kind of like stick out too much in this if you're using a darker color for that. So I think a couple parts in that dark green works, but at the moment I think there's a couple too many. But again, I mean, it's this one. I think the painting is kind of in between. On the Nataku, I was kind of fine with the hand painting. The brush strokes on there, like the visible brush strokes, I think kind of fit the style. Didn't really like it quite so much on the camphor. This one I'm not sure, because I think you can't really see as much of the brush strokes, and it could just be the color and the lighting of the photos that you can't really see it very well. You can't really see it quite as much in some areas. In some areas you can though. So I think in general, from what I can tell, it looks like the paint application was a little bit better for this one, but you can still see the brush strokes in some areas, like here on the gold and stuff. And so I think, as far as I can tell, the hand brushing was done better on this one. Better in that I mean that it's smooth without any brush strokes, but you can still see some in there. So what I would advise would be to check out and getting into airbrushing. I mean, you can hand paint, and it's like I said, there can be a style to it that you can fit, but if that's not necessarily the style that you're going for, then I would recommend getting into airbrushing. Or you could perfect your hand brushing as well, I suppose too. But airbrushing, I think, would just be easier. Okay. Next, this is from Colt. It's got one kit here. I think all the other submissions were all just one kit. I think Nims was the only one that was multiple kits. So that's okay. And let me show this to you guys and then read what he wrote. All right. This is the RE100 GP04, obviously. So he said this is his favorite MS of lesser fame. I can understand that. It's a very cool MS and certainly of lesser fame, indeed. He said the colors are in line with UC suits, period, but the free hand brush work is incredibly sloppy at best. Okay, so he's admitting that his detail painting was a little bit sloppy. Although I think slight worn look. Of course, I tried normal stickers apply a while ago. So clean up. Okay, so yeah, basically he just applied the stickers on here, did a little bit of detail painting, which he admitted was not done very well. But let's take a look. So yeah, obviously using the stickers, you're going to get the outline of the sticker there, and especially on these blue parts. Like here's a perfect example of here on the white sticker is not quite as noticeable. I mean, you can see like a little bit of the outline of that, but that's comparable to what you would see if it was just waterslide decal as well too. Even with waterslide decals, you can see a little bit of that, but you can see right next to there on the blue, you can see very clearly the outline of that. And that's even with these pictures being kind of not very well lit, and you can still see that. If this was like really well lit, you would see the outline of the sticker very clearly. And then, like he was saying, you can see some of the detail painting here. I think the gray on the side of the face, that's detail painted there as well, that gray bit. What else, like here in the red in the vernier, you can see there's a little bit of red. You got a little bit around the edge of there as well. And now what you can do with that pretty easily is just clean that up with a Q-tip. So like on that particular part, it would be pretty easy to clean up. Other parts, we'll see, I think are a little bit more difficult. But inside verniers like that, it's pretty simple how you can just, even if you're using a Gundam marker, and you guys know I never advise using Gundam markers, but it's like kind of for beginners, like when you're just getting into like just trying out, just doing a little bit of detail painting, especially painting the inside of verniers like this. Gundam markers are pretty well suited for that, because you just need to basically just fill in the inside of the vernier, and then if you get a little bit like around the edge of there, you can just clean that up with a Q-tip and like some you can use enamel thinner, but you really don't necessarily need that. Just some lighter fluid would be fine. So there's some lighter fluid on a Q-tip and just wipe around the edge of that, and you can clean up around the edge of the vernier. But the problem that you have that's kind of hard to avoid is that usually, and like this is the case with this one as well too, usually the verniers are molded in gray, and usually the color that they're meant to be on the inside is like yellow or red or white, or sometimes like that too, very light colors. So putting that light or bright color on gray is kind of hard to do to get it to look really good. So usually what people will do will keep putting more and more paint to try to get that nice bright color that you want for the inside of that vernier. The problem is, the more paint that you add, the paint is just pooling in the center part of there. So you can see that a little bit here. And that's good. I'm not sure. You can't really see it very well in that photo. Let's see, is there any other close-up photo? We can see that better. Probably this is going to be the best one. But if you look closely, and you can see what I mean, how the paint is uneven, how it should just be like a solid red. You can see like around the center ring there, the red is like brighter, and then it's like duller, and then brighter, and then duller. It's because the paint is pooling around the details in there. So that's if you're trying to put too much paint in there, it's not evenly coating the whole surface area. That's the problem with doing this with Gundam markers. So if you're using, I think just from what I've seen, and because I've never really done this, I've just seen it done a bunch. As far as I can remember, maybe a long time ago. But I think if you are going to do that, using silver Gundam marker, I think is probably the best, because silver paint markers, I think usually their coverage is pretty good. But white, yellow, red are not as good, just like pigment coverage there. So you'll have to add more paint and it's going to pool like that. But silver, I think usually is pretty good. You won't really have that issue, I think, quite as much. So just a heads up if you want to do that. But if you're going for color accuracy, obviously the verniers on this particular design are not meant to be silver, so that wouldn't really work. But yeah, just here you can see it looks like you like the paint didn't quite get all the way up to like the edge of the vernier, and so again, just what you can do, just color that in all super well, so that you get full coverage where you need it. And then if you go up a little bit over the edge, that's fine, because you can just clean that up with a Q-tip. So that would be my advice for that. But let's take a look. I mean, just in general, I mean, just it's gonna look fine from a distance. So I kind of want to focus on the close-up photos, because that's where we really need to look to see how everything's going. And it looks like maybe this is the best photo that we have of the inside of the giant vernier, or the giant thruster there in the shoulder. And again, you can see the paint coverage is not very even, and there's a little bit going around up over the lip of that. So again, that's just the trouble with using Gundam markers, or even just like hand brushing some paints. Just painting a bright color like that over gray is not going to work very easily. So that's the kind of issue you'll typically run into with that. This one as well too. What I would recommend for painting something like this in yellow, and like whether you're doing a hand brushing, or even if you're using Gundam marker, I think it can work for this. But if your hand is uneven for this, and it was maybe just a week or so ago, I was talking to someone about this. Someone was messaging me about a similar issue. Masking. You can mask this kind of detail, and you would think like, oh, masking, maybe just like the immediate thought is that masking is what you do for airbrushing. You mask around details for when you're airbrushing. But even hand painting and stuff, you can mask that as well. And I mean, that will help you to get, good coverage. So just masking around this, and then you can paint your yellow, again, whether it's by hand or by Gundam marker or whatever, with a little bit more ease, I think, without worrying so much about getting paint where you don't want to get paint. And for the most part, it looks like he's kept the yellow where it needs to be, except for maybe a little bit of yellow bleed out there. But it looks like probably what the problem that he ran into was then there after he painted it yellow, then he tried to panel line that. And then when he was trying to clean up the panel lining, it was also taking up some of the yellow paint, which is what's going to happen with using the enamel-based paint like that. So what you need to do in that case is gloss coat in between. So paint your enamel paints if you're going to do like that. Or what I would have recommended for this, and it seems like kind of a waste, because what I would have recommended would have been using yellow spray can. Then you don't need to worry about this, because spray can's lacquer based. So then when you're doing your panel lining over, you don't really need to worry about taking up the yellow paint quite as much. You can, but it's not as easy to do. And the problem with this, it seems like kind of a waste to buy a bottle of or a spray can of yellow paint for just painting a few little details. But you can see like here as well, if you mask that, the little vernier up on the top of the shoulder, mask that. And if you just masked all of this stuff and then just sprayed with yellow spray can, it would have ultimately, I think, been a lot easier in the long run. And then like the little yellow detailer on the side skirt as well too, because then again, over that spray can of lacquer, you can panel line that and clean up the panel lining much easier without running into issues like this or like this. So that would be what I would recommend. For painting in this black detail here and then like the black on these vents at the bottom, it looks like that's also maybe just done with just like Sharpie or something as well, is what it looks like. And just, again, would not really recommend that because you'll just have like uneven coverage there with that. It's hard to get good solid coverage. So again, would recommend just masking and painting that probably. And I know from experience that especially on the fuel tanks of this kit, the masking is a kind of a pain in the ass. Because you got like these details here, like it's pretty much just all solid white. So you got some nice details of some vents and things on there that you want to paint, but there's some good masking involved. So it takes a while, I know. But otherwise, I mean, just it looks like you can see like a couple of numb marks here and there as well that I think could maybe be done with a little bit more sanding also, just to make everything look nice and clean and all that. But I think that really just kind of just about covers it. I know the fuel tanks also have massive seam lines down them, which I will assume that he didn't remove the seam line on there. I can't really see well in any of the photos, but he didn't mention anything about it, and I would assume that he probably just left the seam line there. I don't think he removed that. But yeah, so basically this is a good example of just kind of learning at the beginning stages. What do I want to say? It's the expression for that. Anyway, when you're just first trying out like detail painting, I think probably a lot of people go through this on like maybe their first 1 or 2 builds where they're trying it out and they're realizing what's working and what works and what doesn't work. And so this is a good example of the trial and error, I think, right? Exactly. So, I mean, some parts, I mean, you can see he's trying different things, trying to paint in the details and in certain bits. And so that's good. That's a good initiative to do that. And you're learning that some ways of doing that work and some don't work. So I would say check out some different ways to do some of the little detail painting and things like that. And next one will surely be better. I'm sure. Okay. So thank you, Colt. Now, let's see. The next one is from Juju. And it's a Grimgard painted, modeled to look like a Valkyrie from World of Warcraft, he said. So let's see. And I'm sure you guys are going to have the same thought that I had and we had in the Discord when he showed this to us in the Discord. I think me and 1 or 2 other guys all kind of had the same immediate thought about this. But what are your guys' immediate thoughts about this? Before I get into talking about it, I'm just kind of curious about what you guys are going to say as what are your immediate thoughts about this, because I'm guessing that someone, or at least 1 or 2 of you, is going to say the exact same thing as to what we all thought in the Discord about this. But take a look at that while I kind of read what he wrote in his email about this to me, and then I'll check back with your guys' comments to see if you guys thought the same thing about this. So they called it the Grimgard Dark Arbiter. His first Gunpla kit that he built, and it sat on his shelf for 3 years. At one time, I had an idea that I'd like to paint it since it has the Valkyrie frame. A great color scheme would be some dark colors inspired by the Valkyries from World of Warcraft. So he included a picture of that. We'll take a look at that. They have pale skin, dark brown or black armor, and blue aura. So he wanted to paint the pieces metallic black with inner frame off-white. And he used the water-based acrylic paints to break the black color in the armor. I had to paint some details in metallic blue. And he used some liquid chrome marker in there for the details around the eye as well. He used a gray Pentaline wash, and let's see, painted some light chipping. Okay, I noticed that. I didn't notice that at first, but I did notice that later in some of the other pictures. So I was wondering if he did that. But yeah, it looks like he said he did do some light chipping with gray and silver. So we'll see that when we take a look at the other pictures here. And the wings, obviously from the Build Divers set, they're painted black, and he used AK Interactive pencil to light blue fog aura on them. Since the Grimgard doesn't have a backpack, he had to drill holes for that, and both the mobile suit and the wings with the metallic top coat. Okay, so yeah, we got that. Let's see. What are your guys' thoughts? Eddie, Anubis, some of the enders, Anubis. Yeah, obviously the head has a very Anubis vibe. You know, just naturally the Grimgard does, because it's kind of similar. Someone said not a fan of the wings. The lighting needs work. Okay, I'll give that to you guys as well. But interestingly, and Deanjo said Final Fantasy VII reference. I could imagine that. Yeah, Deanjo, that's a good guess. But he said it was World of Warcraft. I don't know anything about World of Warcraft, so I wouldn't have guessed that either. And David, the silhouette is nice. Yeah, I agree with that as well, David. And good to see you there, by the way. But it looks like none of you had the same, or at least no one commented the same immediate thought. But my immediate thought about this, and what a couple other people mentioned in the Discord, was that this is like the first time that I've ever seen these wing parts like used well, I think. That I can remember. I'm sure I've probably seen something on Twitter somewhere along the lines where I saw those wing add-on parts used in like a cool custom build. But in general, those custom wing parts are pretty ugly looking, I think. But this one, they look to me like they're used pretty well in this case. This is an example of where I think they're used pretty effectively. So it makes for a pretty cool look. So we'll take a look at this in more of these detail photos here, but just for reference, in case any of you guys are like me and didn't know anything about World of Warcraft, here was the inspiration behind that. So I think pretty good. Painting it depends how close you wanted to make it like exactly to look like this. If you really wanted to look exactly like this, I think it would have been cool for the wings to be in like a little bit lighter color. So it looks like they're pretty much like a very similar color to just like the main mobile suit, being like pretty much as black as like the main color. But in like just like a darker kind of blue, or even like sort of like metallic kind of blue color. Yeah, I'm not sure. There's a few different ways that you could paint that to kind of get this sort of effect on the plastic. But anyway, I think how they are painted looks fine. But like I said, it just depends. If you really wanted to look exactly like that, I maybe would have painted it a little bit differently, but how that looks cool. And you can see what he did here, how he's talking about using the blue pencil to kind of emphasize some of like the edges of the feathers and stuff. You can't really see it super well in some of the other photos, but you can see it, I think, pretty well in this photo here. Some of the blue edges around there. So yeah, just in general, I think like David mentioned, the silhouette is nice. Just the general style of it. I mean, like it's not really a ton of like customization or anything. Basically, it's just the Grimgard and with the wings attached onto it. But just the pose and everything, it works well for that, I think. And the second thing that I thought about immediately when I was looking at this was the markings. Usually, I'm not sure I would be into having like the same marking on both shoulders like that, because usually, you think you want to put like the marking like just on one shoulder, like have something different on the other shoulder, something like that. But if you're going for something like this, which is obviously very stylistic and not meant to look like a kind of normal mobile suit, having something like that could be cool, where it's sort of like not like a marking for like a particular faction, but just like kind of part of the design. But in that case, I think maybe if they were a little bit larger, but I know you're working with the decals that are just like, you didn't create the decals yourself here, so you didn't really have much choice in the size of them. But I think just if they were a little bit larger, I think would have fit with the style, I think, a little bit more. But again, I know you didn't really have a lot of control over that. But let's see. I did also notice here that you can see on the shoulder there's some mold line here. You can see like this line down the front of the shoulder there. That's just a mold line in the plastic. Sanding that first before painting would have been good. It's the kind of thing you just want to remove. So like everyone knows about removing seam lines, of course. Yes, we talk about that all the time. But mold lines as well, also really important to get rid of those, just to get the best look to your kit. Again, it's not like a rule written in law you have to do, but if you want to really look it's best to just go ahead and just sand those away first before you get to painting. So there's a mold line there, but in this close-up image you can see some of the chipping here as well, which the chipping I think looks pretty good because it's pretty minimal, just a little bit, but I think a little bit around the shoulders as well too. So I think the chipping itself looks done pretty well because it's pretty minimal. Again, a lot of times people will go kind of overboard with that. But especially around here, these sections, the amount of chipping there looks pretty nice. But the placement of the placement of the chipping, I think, could use some more, because I would have liked to seen some more, like maybe around here on the shoulder. Seems like it would have made sense as well too, like up this part here on the front of the chest, because like you got this part here on the front of the crotch, and you got a little bit of chipping there, and the part directly above that has no chipping on it at all, at least like as far as I can tell from this photo. So it's not very, and like you don't want to just apply the same amount of chipping all over the kit, because you want to try to think about it in like a logical way, which sections would realistically receive more damage. But to have like a part that has like some chipping like kind of all around the edges there, and then the part like right above that with no chipping on it at all, except maybe a little bit there at the bottom. But anyway, I think just the placing of the chipping could use a little bit of work. And then like that's just some chipping on the black sections, but then some chipping on the white sections here, like on the elbow joint, also looks a little bit not right, because it looks like it's just kind of, I would assume maybe he did this like with a sponge method, where he just like sponged that on there on like the elbow joints there. It looks a bit odd because it doesn't look very like realistic. Like it kind of makes sense thinking that like the joints would naturally get more weathering because they're like the moving parts, right? But that style of weathering, just like sponge chipping on joints, doesn't really work. Dry brushing would work a lot better on your joint areas. It's like chipping, like sponge chipping, or like around the edges, it works really well for like around the edges of armor and stuff like that. But on the joints, dry brushing is probably a better way to go, I would say, for that. So the chipping on the armor, I think, looks good. Could use a little bit more of it in certain areas. The chipping on the joints, I think, should have been done in a different way, just to make it look more realistic. And obviously, this is not really like the style of this is not meant to look. It's not meant to look like it's like out of 8th MS Team, like super realistic. But it is still needs to have like a certain amount of realisticness if you're going to weather it, because like weathering is something that is only going to apply to something that's, you know, in real world circumstances. So if you want it to look super unrealistic, so that it's completely to the point of being like super like sci-fi like this, this probably is not going to have any like chipping on it because it's actually like a corporeal kind of thing. If that makes sense, it's kind of hard to explain what I'm trying to say, but I guess you guys get what I mean. If it's like an actual like angel monster kind of thing, it's not going to have chipping on it. Chipping is what would apply to like an actual piece of machinery or something. So, okay. Anyway, but yeah, and it's got the little bit of decals here also on the back, which are fine because they're on the back. They're not really all that noticeable, but a little bit out of place, I think, just because of the fact that there's no other decals around anywhere else. Oh, I guess maybe on the top of the backpack, there's a little bit more. I mean, obviously, there's the ones on the front of the shoulders, which we talked about, but then having pretty much nothing else. Let me see. Is there some more? Oh, there's a little bit on these logos here on the shields as well, I guess, too. So I guess there's a couple. And I think maybe on the bottom, on the legs, there's a couple of decals there as well. Kind of hard to see in these photos. Let me see. Maybe there are a couple there. Maybe there's a couple of decals there. On legs also, but so anyway, these line decals I don't really think fit quite as well there as some of the other ones. So the metallic blue for the different details on the parts looks cool though. Here on the top for the reactor, there on the back, and then the metallic blue like around the eye. The metallic blue on the swords looks good as well too. Looks nice. And then like here on the front of the chest, these parts in that nice metallic blue. So like the metallic blue for like the parts on the frame and like the eyes, the swords, I think looks good. I'm not really liking the metallic blue quite as much like on the armor parts, like here on the front skirt. Just because I think it looks dark. Like on the frame parts, it looks nice and bright. But because the armor parts are black and then the metallic blue on top of that, it's not very bright. It's quite dark now. It's darkened by being just on top of black paint, so it doesn't look quite as nice. Whereas like on the lighter colored parts, it really pops and it has that nice metallic shine to it. But I mean, the amount of blue that's on the black sections is pretty minimal. And again, if you're looking at it like just if it's set up like this, you're not really going to notice that very much at all. But it's nice, and I like that he used a light color for the inner frame parts as well too. If you just use like a dark gray or like a gunmetal color, it just would have all blended together with the armor and it just wouldn't have looked as nice. So having a nice little bit of contrast there with the armor being all really dark metallic and then the inner frame being light color is a nice, some nice contrast there with that. I think that was definitely a good choice for that. And just like the shading on the wings is nice too. If they were just like solid black or solid white or something, they wouldn't look as nice. But the shading looks good. And while the lighting is maybe for this photo, maybe the lighting is not particularly good for us, like as viewers, to examine the kit closely. The lighting works really well just for, to light the kit like this. So like if this was your display and this is how you have it on your shelf and you have it lit like this, I think it looks cool. If you're submitting this for like a contest or something, then this lighting is not very ideal because it's kind of hard to actually see the kit in great detail, but it looks cool just how it's lit like that. So anyway, oh yeah, there's a couple of the decals there on the front of the chest too. I didn't notice until just now, these ones here. So yeah, there's a couple more than maybe I was noticing, but very cool. I like it. And hello to Ryan as well too. Hey Ryan, I see you there. All right, I think we've got then two more. This next one is, I'm not sure which name he wanted me to call him by. We'll just go with GGW Pla. Get these photos open here. What he's submitted here is a G-Self Perfect Pack that he's going to custom painted. So let me show this to you. Here we are. G-Self Perfect Pack, which I immediately appreciate just because it's a G-Self and you don't really see a ton of these painted very often. So it's cool to see a G-Self or just anything from G-Reco every now and then. So I like that. And I like that he's gone with a custom color scheme for it. Just because it's something kind of unique don't really see these kits a lot, and so to see one and it's in custom colors is just kind of a unique, just to see something different for a change. Yeah, we see a million different custom painted Zakus and gyms and all that kind of stuff all the time. Something you don't see very often, so I like that. And as for the painting, though, let's see. Well, let me read what he wrote about this. My immediate thought is that the painting application looks very thick. And I think that's probably because of just the gloss coat is also making it look more like that. And the lining is done in a way. But let me see if he talked about in his email about how it was painted. The first customized Gunpla. At the time, I didn't have access to an airbrush, so I used spray cans and Gundam markers. Had a few breaking issues. The inspiration goes, I based it, the color scheme off a Pokemon. Which Pokemon? This, I feel like I know which Pokemon was it. Deoxys, right? Is that right? So the Pokemon this is based off of? He didn't mention, he just says based off of Pokemon. I also wanted to give it a bit of a 2D look, so I opted for drawing the lines on the rough edges. So you would want to give it a little bit of that kind of cell shading style look, so I can see that. I said I wanted to give it a brand new toy look, so I glossed or with no less than 4 times the high gloss. Okay, so yeah, the amount of 4 coats of gloss, that's why it's looking the way it's looking. I can see that now. So the paint is not necessarily really thick, but the gloss coat is especially thick. Or I would recommend someone to go for a normal version of the G Self, or any other version of the G Self. Honestly, as far as the kits go, this version of the G Self I think is probably my favorite, to be honest. The Assault Pack was cool because I liked the extended proportions of the legs on that version of the G Self Assault Pack. But this backpack is really cool as well. So anyway, let me switch back here to the chat. So yeah, I was wondering if he was intentionally going for a little bit of a cell shade look. Honestly, I wasn't sure if that was intentional or if it was kind of like accidental, in that just the panel lining, the way that he was doing the panel lining was like just turning out to be like extra thick like that. So he decided to just go with it and then just make it look like cell shading like that. So I don't know exactly how it came to happen, but either way, I think, it works in a way. It looks messy, but I think like for that cell shading style, it needs to look a little bit like not super clean, but I think this still could be cleaned up a little bit. And just the painting application in general looks a little bit uneven. I wonder, he said he used spray cans, but I wonder like what type of spray cans, because maybe he used like some kind of like automotive spray paint or something like that, where the paint application on model kits is usually just not quite as nice as using like actual model, like Tamiya or Mr. Color spray cans or something like that. You know what I mean? Oh, hey, Alex. Haven't seen you around in the live streams in a while, as far as I've seen anyway. Good to see you. How's it going? So yeah, I understand what he was talking about in his email about what he's going for this, going for the cell shading style and like intentionally making it look like a toy style by like adding a ton of gloss to it. I'm not sure that's really working to the benefit of making the model look as good as it could look, though. But it's kind of one of those cases where if that's what you're going for, then good on you. It's not going to apply, or it's not going to be to everyone's taste, but it's your model, so you have to make it how you want it anyway. So if that's what you wanted, then I think there's nothing wrong with that. For most of us, I think this is not generally the look that you would want to go for. even if you're doing the cell shading style, like I said, you want it to look a little bit not even because it's supposed to look like it's drawn right by hand. And so if it's too perfect, then it loses the effect. But this is what it's a little bit too messy even for that, I think. So a little bit more cleanup of the lines, just making the lines a little bit sharper, I think would have been better. And I can assume that maybe he was just having some trouble cleaning it up by just the way that he painted that. But again, it's kind of hard to tell without knowing like super in detail, like step by step along the whole process. And then he said he did use some Gundam marker as well too. So I'm not sure about which parts he used the Gundam marker for. The metallic blue parts, I would assume those are done with spray can. But it's kind of hard to tell. And the masking, I think it was a cool idea to like have the stripes on the horns. Like I think that's an interesting idea. But it looks like the masking didn't work very well. So like the masking is kind of messy on that. So again, I think it's like a interesting idea, but the result, it didn't come out that clean. And then definitely here on the cannons on the backpack, that gray, the application of the gray paint on there definitely looks very uneven. So again, I'm not sure if that's just the spray paint didn't go on there very evenly, or if what we're actually seeing is just like some shadows, and it looks like the paint is even just because of the cleanup of the panel lines. It looks like it could be that as well. Like then you did the panel lining on there, or whatever, and was cleaning it up and didn't clean it up super well. So that's why it looks a bit messy on there, or if it's the actual paint itself. It's kind of hard to tell which way that went, but I think basically what I would say about this is that I like the idea. I just think that the actual application of the idea needs some practice, needs some work. It's a bit messy, but with some practice and with cleaning up just the technique of this, you had an idea that you wanted to apply to this by giving it this custom color scheme and giving it this specific style of like the cell shading and all that. So just doing that just takes practice. So I would say in the future, again, it's kind of hard to say without knowing in super in detail about which parts, because I can't really tell. He said he used Gundam marker, but I'm not sure which parts are painted with Gundam marker, because usually people use Gundam marker for small bits, but most of this, like for the metallic blue, there's quite a lot painted with that. For the red and the gray, there's obviously a lot painted with that. So I would hope that none of that's painted with Gundam marker. As far as I can tell, it doesn't look like it. Painting like large sections like that with Gundam marker is never a good idea, and it's always going to be really uneven. So the fact that the paint looks really uneven could be because he painted this entire section with Gundam marker, although I would hope not. That's certainly too large of a section to paint with just Gundam marker, if it's the gray or the red or any of that. But the blue is kind of hard to tell, man, because let's look at the close-up here. Like here on the chest vents and the front skirts, that metallic blue looks a little bit more even, but the metallic blue on the top of the shoulder definitely looks not as uneven, or not as even. So maybe the metallic blue is what he painted with Gundam marker. I'm not exactly sure. But again, I like the idea. I just think that it needs a little bit of refining, a little bit of cleanup. And hopefully, what do you say about that? And he said it was his first fully customized Gunpla as well, too. So very important to keep that in mind. I think for a first attempt at customizing Gunpla, it's not that bad at all. I mean, it certainly needs some work, but yeah. Again, it's just a learning process. Trial and error, right? So I would say, stick to maybe airbrushing, or stick to spray cans for maybe 1 or 2 more builds, but then just try to make your way into getting into airbrushing. I think will be, especially if you want to do custom color schemes and stuff like that, you're just going to find it so much easier and more comfortable to do with an airbrush. So hopefully you can get that sorted out. And again, just a reminder to everyone, I feel like I make this point every time I talk about this, but it's an important point to make, in that the main reasons people don't airbrush, usually one reason is they don't have the space for it, which I can understand. That's kind of the hardest thing to work around. If you don't have the space for it, there's kind of nothing really you can do about that. The other main reason people will say is that because they don't have the money for it, it's expensive. But again, just very important to remember that the beginning cost of an airbrush is expensive because buying the actual thing, the airbrush, the compressor, setting up some sort of spray booth, whether you buy a spray booth or just buy the parts to make a DIY one. This total cost for all the stuff that you need at first is expensive, but then after that, it's so much more cheaper to just be airbrushing than buying spray cans for everything. Spray cans are going to cost you a lot more in the long run, and you get much better results with airbrush as well. A lot more color variety. You can mix the colors very easily. You're not wasting as much paint as with the spray cans. So just if you have the space availability for airbrushing, and even if you have to save up money for a little bit, if you're able to save up money and get to that point, then it's just a much better idea to get into airbrushing. Yeah. So, okay, let's look at the last entry that we have here today. We have quite a few to look at today. That's good. All right. This is from Cliff. All right. And this is a Char Zaku 1 MG. It's the 1.0 Zaku 1 MG, so the old MG. The left leg ball joint peg had broken off and been super glued back on. And commander's antenna had broken and was horribly super glued back on. All the beads are missing and replaced with poly caps. Probably painting them all around from when parts were twisted with runners from early 2000s. So all nub works removed, seams removed, metal beads and thrusters, an upgrade kit from Simp, and the rifle is the resin kit from Simp as well. Any LEDs from a dollar store candle used to wire up for the LED. Bazooka, chest machine guns were spare parts from the Alex and the Tristan kit. I used those same parts for making a chest machine gun in my mega size, actually, if I remember correctly. And to paint is Tester's Diamond Dust spray can. Then airbrushed a mix of 50-cent Walmart paints to achieve the colors, and coated with Tamiya X22 clear in between layers. Okay. So to remove the seam on the legs, I had to cut the frame in half and cut. So he sent, okay, I get it. So he sent a lot of work in progress photos that we can see here for this. So we'll go through all the work in progress photos to see this. And so, yeah, just keep in mind, this is the old MG Zaku. So not as good by any means as the 2.0. Not even close. Sorry, let's see. Here's getting into some of the work in progress, like the kind of half and half look there with half a head and only one leg. But yeah, there's those those pipe parts, which don't look good. So this is getting into the work and using the gun. That's to be the gun from the Master Grade Dom, isn't it? I believe. That machine gun there, you can see, has got the holes drilled in the chest to be like Origin style, having the detail or the little Gatling gun there in the torso, like the Origin Zaku. It's got those drilled out there in the chest. We'll see in some other work in progress photos here. I don't know if he changed this. Maybe later on when we see the finished result, and maybe looking. Oh, okay, so he did do a little bit more. Okay, so I won't get into that at this point. What I was gonna say is that like just having just a straight hole drilled in there, and then just the machine gun part, like the little Gatling gun part inside there, just as it is, looks a little bit too simple. Something else around there to just add some other detail to that would have been good, I think, which ultimately is what he did. So that's good. I won't say that point that I was going to make about that, because it looks like basically what he did was add a little bit toward over the top of that, just to where it's not just like the flat piece with a hole drill into it, but he made like a kind of bit going over the top of it like that. So that's cool. Good. So where were we? Here's the leg frame, or the leg modification here. What do you modify this? What do you say about this? I can't see what's modified about this, or what this picture is showing. Maybe this is the part he had to cut. Let's see. Check. Oh, okay. Yeah. So in order to remove this seam line between these armor parts, he had to cut the frame in half here. So good simple modification for that. So then like this part can be put in separately. So there you go. So and then he made a peg between the two. Okay, so that works. So he just made a peg between the two frame parts so that later, once their seam line is removed on here, he can pop like the knee joint, pop it down into there, and the bottom part can up from the bottom, and then everything's all sorted. So good job. And just removing the seam line here on the front of the thigh. Got to do that too, and had to rescribe this line a little bit there in the center, I'm sure. And then from the side there, like that. Okay. And then just kind of the finished product pre-painting there, it looks like. So let's see, we can zoom in here. You can see how he molded up that part. And I'm not sure how he did that. It looks like maybe it's just done like just with putty. Just formed that shape there. Maybe had to sand it out to get it look quite right. But and using that resin kit there for the 100 scale version of the anti-ship rifle. So very cool. And then just replacing the piping parts with some metallic, actual metal piping parts, which you can get just aftermarket metal piping parts. So there you go. And then the painted version. So there you go. And he said, yeah, they were just sprayed with the spray can and then airbrushed a mix of our paints to achieve the colors. Anyway, so I think the colors came out good. He left the left the metallic parts just left the metal parts metallic. Didn't paint those. So that's people go one way or the other, whether you should or shouldn't, or just whether you prefer to or prefer not to paint metal parts like that. So especially when you buy like these metal detail up parts, like you have the actual metal parts for the thruster bells and for the piping on the legs and head and the body. I would paint them, but it's just a personal preference. If you want them to be like silver, like metallic chrome like that, then just don't paint them, because they're already like that just as metal parts. But for me personally, I would paint them. In the closer up photos here, it looks like yeah, I don't know, it's kind of hard to see in some of these, but it looks like the paint application here is not super smooth, and it looks like the little bits of like kind of metallic dust. I'm not sure. He said the base layer is Tester's diamond dust spray can, so maybe that's why. So that's why it's got like a kind of little bit of like metallic look to it, with like these little shiny bits you can see in there. He said, and then airbrushed with a mix of just cheap Walmart paints. So yeah, maybe Maybe that's what it is. Why there's like a little bit of, you can see like little metallic flecks in there. That's actually from the base coat, I guess. I'm not familiar with that Tester's Diamond Dust spray can. But anyway, it's an interesting look. Looks like some of the seam lines could have used a little bit more sanding though. Like here on the upper arm, you can still see the seam line there a little bit from where it was not just not sanded enough. And like here on the front of the leg too. It's really faint, of course, but that's just what happens if you don't sand the seam lines enough. Sometimes it takes a lot of sanding. And then like Tim always talks about, if you guys ever watched Tim's live streams or heard Tim talking about removing seam lines, he doesn't like using putty, because what happens with putty is that when you use lacquer paints, it can reactivate the putty and the seam line will reappear even after you've like puttied and sanded it. So that is a problem that does happen. So I think for like little seam line filling like that, he recommends, and sometimes I use putty and sometimes I use super glue. He recommends using super glue. I've used both at different times, and just you have to just do whatever is needed. But yeah, it looks like some of the seam lines maybe could have gotten a once over. I didn't even notice this in this picture. I was looking at the kit. I didn't even notice that there was a little pilot figure here floating in the foreground of the photo. I just noticed that just now. That's cool. Yeah, I like that. And then the use of just like it's like a LED from like a dollar store candle or something like that to use for the LED in the head. That's a great idea. That's something I've been wanting to try out, just for a video, just to show like how to do that. I keep forgetting to, every time I go to the dollar store here, it's Daiso here in Korea, and then Japan too. Every time I go to Daiso, I always forget to look for something like that. But it's a great idea especially if you're not really too well experienced with doing LED work like me. Just buying something cheap like from the dollar store that has an LED in it, just take it out of that and just putting it into your kit. It's a good, cheap, simple alternative if you want to if you only need just like one or two LEDs. Something simple like that for like a Zaku's mono eye can work really well. So yeah, cool. And otherwise, I mean, just the painting and colors, the markings look pretty good. I'm not sure about the markings. Maybe you had to get like they look probably like they're some third party or like a Chinese markings set of like a 1/100 scale version of the Char's Zaku markings, like 1/100 scale version of the origin markings, basically. If you guys were wondering about where he got 1/100 scale markings like that. And David is asking, was it cracked upon pressure? David, if you're talking about the seam line I was mentioning before, it doesn't look like the seam line like cracked or popped open from like the pressure of I think I know what you're talking about anyway. That can also happen sometimes too after you move a seam line apart. Then when you're doing your assembly later on, it's like really tight, and if it's too tight a fit, sometimes the seam line will crack. It'll pop back open. That really sucks when that happens, but it does happen sometimes as well too. Doesn't look like that happened here with this. It just looks like that just needed a little bit more sanding. Like here, oh, that one, I don't know. This one looks like maybe that's cracked open, possibly. Or does he forgot to glue that one, or it just was he glued it and there was still a big seam line there, and he didn't want to bother with putting some putty in there or something like that. I don't know exactly what is the case, but yeah, you can see that seam line there a little bit. And it definitely looks like he did some panel lining on it, but there's some sections where it doesn't look like he panel lined, like here on the back of the shoulder. So there's a couple of areas where it doesn't look like, it looks like maybe he missed a couple of bits with panel lining, but did do some panel lining in other areas. Like here, it looks like the panel lining's all done around the lower legs there, as far as I can tell. And then like on the black parts, looks like he did a little bit of panel lining in like gray or silver or something in there. But anyway, using the old 1.0 Master Grade Zaku to make a Origins version Zaku 100 scale. Is a pretty cool idea. So yeah, interesting. And just good use of just using some cheap paints and a cheap LED for that. Sometimes you have to be a little bit innovative in looking for supplies, especially if you are having trouble finding the exact supplies that you need, or you just can't get your hands on the supplies that you need for one reason or another. Yeah, it's cool. So, yeah, that is all the submissions for today, I think. Let me just make sure. I didn't miss anything. Yeah, I think so. So it should be all good. Oh, okay, wait, hang on. I can see, sorry. Earlier we were taking a look at the Nataku, the Supernova Nataku kit from NIM, and I can see there was another email that went to a different folder for some reason. That he had some more photos of that, so sorry about that. We only had like the 3 photos to go off of, but he actually sent more photos that I didn't see that were in a different email. Sorry about that, but anyway, we got the idea anyway. So that's it for today's episode. Thank you again to those of you guys who submitted your works. And again, just for all of those of you guys watching, the submissions for this come from my Patreon supporters. It's part of my Patreon rewards tier. So if you're interested in submitting works for the next episode or any future episodes, you can check out the Patreon page, becoming a patron, and then you'll get heads up for when the episode's going to be, and you can submit your works for that. Can be, as we saw, and some of those can be works in progress or completed works or anything. But hopefully, for those of you guys who did submit your works, hopefully you got some good feedback. Hopefully there was some useful feedback in there for you guys. And I appreciate all you guys submitting your works and for your support and everything. For all my Patreon supporters, thank you guys all for your support, and everyone who's watching. Thank you guys for watching, hanging out. Hopefully you saw some cool stuff, got some cool ideas and all that as well. So appreciate it. For me, now I'm going to be working on this afternoon the Resin God Gundam kit a little bit. So you guys can expect part 2 of that work in progress to be coming up pretty soon after I work on that for a while, and then need to then work on the video part of that, editing that and posting that for you guys. But hopefully later on this weekend, you guys can watch that. And then next week, what's next week? On Wednesday morning, I'll have another episode with Josh of Plum on No Trend. And then on Friday, another interview with the one and only Mike Rinaldi. Yes, if you guys saw my video over on the USA Gundam TV channel it seems like last week. It was only a few days ago. With Adam on the USA Gundam TV channel, we talked about Mike Rinaldi's books, and I was talking about how I wanted to get him for another interview. So I got in touch with Mike, and we set up the date. So it's going to be next Friday morning, 1 week from today. This time slot next week is going to be with Mike for another interview. So I've interviewed him before. Go back and check that out if you haven't seen it. But we'll be talking with him again next week, and I'll see you guys there. Have a great weekend, and enjoy the day. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy your life until I see you again next week. Goodbye. Bye, guys.